In the heart of the rolling hills of eastern Nigeria lay the small village of Isiagu. Known for its fertile soil and vibrant community, the village had thrived for generations. However, in recent times, a severe famine had gripped the land, leaving the villagers struggling to survive. Crops withered in the fields, and the once bountiful harvest became a distant memory. Amidst this hardship lived a woman named Anwulika. Unlike most of the villagers, Anwulika appeared well-fed and healthy. Her round, cheerful face and plump figure stood in stark contrast to the emaciated forms of her neighbors. She lived alone in a modest hut on the outskirts of the village. Without a husband or children, despite her solitude, Anwulika was content and seemed to live a life full of joy and purpose. Every day, Anwulika cooked large pots of food and invited the hungry villagers to share in her meals. She never turned anyone away, and her door was always open. The aroma of her cooking wafted through the village, drawing people to her hut like bees to honey. Her generosity became a beacon of hope in these dark times, and the villagers were grateful for her kindness. However, as time went on, curiosity grew about how she managed to have enough food to feed everyone, even during the famine. Anwulika's life was simple yet fulfilling. She spent her days tending to her small garden, gathering herbs and vegetables, and preparing meals. Her hut was a humble abode, decorated with colorful fabrics and a few cherished mementos from her late mother. Anwulika often spoke fondly of her mother, who had taught her the art of cooking and the importance of sharing with others. Despite the scarcity of food, Anwulika never seemed to lack ingredients. Her meals were always abundant and delicious, a comforting blend of traditional spices and fresh produce. She would serve dishes like jollof rice, yam porridge, and egusi soup, each plate filled with love and care. The villagers marveled at her culinary skills and wondered how she could maintain such a generous supply of food. Rumors began to circulate about the source of Anwulika's provisions. Some believed she had a secret farm hidden away in the hills, while others whispered of supernatural help. The village children, ever curious, would sneak peeks into her kitchen, hoping to catch a glimpse of the magic that made her food so plentiful. Anwulika, however, remained modest and humble, always smiling and never revealing her secrets. As the famine worsened, the villagers' curiosity grew. They couldn't understand how Anwulika continued to feed so many people without running out of food. A few villagers, driven by desperation and intrigue, decided to find out the truth behind her seemingly endless supply. Anya, a young man known for his sharp mind and quick temper, was particularly determined to uncover Anwulika's secret. He had heard whispers about her and was convinced that something extraordinary was at play. Unlike the others, Anya was not content to simply accept Anwulika's generosity without question. He believed there was a hidden source of wealth or a magical power that Anwulika was keeping to herself. One day, Anya decided to take matters into his own hands. He waited until dusk, when the village was quiet, and made his way to Anwulika's hut. He hid behind a large bush near the kitchen window, determined to observe her cooking process without being seen. From his hiding spot, Anya watched as Anwulika moved gracefully around her kitchen. She started by gathering a few modest ingredients, a handful of rice, some dried fish, and a small basket of vegetables. As she prepared the meal, Anya noticed something peculiar. Despite the small amount of ingredients, the pot seemed to brim with food as she cooked. Anwulika stirred the pot, adding herbs and spices with practiced precision. The aroma that filled the air was mouth-watering, a tantalizing blend of flavors that made Anya's stomach growl. He couldn't believe his eyes when Anwulika began to dish out the food. It seemed as though the pot never emptied, no matter how much she served. Anya was baffled. There was no way such a small amount of ingredients could produce so much food. He stayed hidden, watching in silence as Anwulika continued to serve the villagers who had gathered outside her hut. Each person left with a full plate, smiling and thanking Anwulika for her generosity. After a while, Anya sneaked back to his hut, his mind racing with questions. What kind of sorcery was this? He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something supernatural at play. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Anya decided he would confront Anwulika and demand the truth. The next day, Anya approached Anwulika's hut with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. He found her in the middle of cooking, the familiar aroma of her food filling the air. Anya greeted her with a forced smile, trying to mask his true intentions. Good afternoon, Anwulika, he said, attempting to sound casual. Your cooking always smells so wonderful. It's truly a gift to the village. Anwulika looked up and smiled warmly. Thank you, Anya. My mother taught me well. Would you like to join us for a meal? Anya hesitated and decided to cut to the chase. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. How do you manage to have so much food, even when the rest of us are struggling? It's like you have some sort of magic pot or something. Aulika's expression remained calm, but there was a flicker of unease in her eyes. She continued stirring the pot, her movements measured and deliberate. Magic pot? She echoed, feigning ignorance. I don't know what you're talking about, Anya. I just use what little I have and make do. Anya wasn't convinced. Come on, Anwalika, we both know that can't be true. I've seen you cook with my own eyes. There's no way that small amount of rice can feed the whole village. You must be using some kind of enchantment. Anwalika sighed, realizing that Anya wouldn't be easy deterred. She glanced around, making sure no one else was listening, and then leaned in closer. All right, Anya, she whispered. There's something special about my cooking, but it's not what you think. It's a family secret. Anya's eyes widened with interest. A secret? What kind of secret? Aulika paused, choosing her words carefully. It's a special phrase that my mother taught me. When I say it while cooking, the food multiplies. But it only works if the person using it has a pure heart and genuinely wants to help others. Anya's skepticism melted away, replaced by intrigue. A phrase? What is it? Aulika hesitated, then decided to share the phrase. She recited it softly, barely loud enough for Anya to hear. Odima odinobi, n'ụzọ kwesịrị ekwesị, iri ga-eziga n'ezie. It's good, it's in the heart. In the right way, this will be truly multiply. Anya repeated the phrase, committing it to memory. Thank you, Anwulika. I promise I won't misuse it. Anwulika smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. Just remember, Anya, it's not about the words, it's about the intention behind them. With that, Anya left, eager to try out the incantations for himself. Anwulika watched him go, her heart heavy with worry. She knew that the magic of the pot was not just in the words, but in the spirit of generosity and kindness. She hoped Anya would understand that, but a part of her feared what might happen next. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the village of Isiagu, Anwulika sat in her small hut, contemplating her next move. She had shared the incantation with Anya, knowing that the true magic lay not in the words, but in the intention and purity of heart. However, she couldn't shake the feeling that trouble might be brewing. The villagers' growing curiosity and the potential for misunderstanding worried her deeply. Anwulika decided that it was time to leave Isiagu. She loved the villagers and cherished the time she had spent there, but she knew that staying could lead to unnecessary complications. She had always believed that it was meant to help those in need, not to cause discord or suspicion. With a heavy heart, she began to pack her few belongings, including her cherished cooking pot, which her mother had given her before she passed away. The pots were no ordinary cookware. They had been passed down through generations in Aulika's family, each keeper charged with using them wisely and with a pure heart. The pots had a mysterious quality. They seemed to multiply the food cooked within them, but only for those who truly understood and respected the spirit of generosity and community. As the village slept, Aunika quietly slipped out of her hut, leaving behind a note of thanks and farewell. She walked through the darkened streets, her footsteps soft and measured. The moonlight guided her path as she made her way out of the village, heading toward the distant hills. She knew that her departure would cause sadness and confusion, but she hoped that the villagers would remember the lesson she had tried to teach them. The next morning, the villagers awoke to find Anwulika's hut locked and empty. A sense of unease spread through the community as people gathered around, wondering what had happened to the generous woman who had been their source of sustenance during the famine. They found her note, which expressed her gratitude for their friendship and explained her decision to leave in search of new places where she could continue her mission of helping those in need. The villagers were disheartened, but Anya saw an opportunity. Embodied by his knowledge of the incantation Aulika had shared, he stepped forward and announced that he would take up the mantle of feeding the village. He assured the villagers that they would not go hungry and that he would continue the tradition of sharing food. Excitement and hope replaced the villagers' initial despair. They were eager to see if Anya could indeed replicate Aulika's miraculous cooking. Anya confided his understanding of the incantation, prepared for his first meal as the village's new provider. He gathered a small amount of rice, some dried fish, and a few vegetables, much like he had seen Aulika do. As he stood before the cooking pot, Anya whispered the incantation. Feeling a rush of anticipation, he stirred the pot, waiting for the magic to happen. As the aroma of cooking food began to waft through the air, the villagers gathered around Anya's hut, eager to receive their meal. Anya dished out the rice and fish, feeling a swell of pride as the first few plates were filled. However, something was amiss. The food didn't look quite right. The rice was clumpy and the fish had a strange off-putting smell. Still, the villagers, hungry and hopeful, accepted the food without question. But as they took their first bites, gasps and cries of disgust filled the air. The food tasted terrible, and some villagers even found maggots in their portions. Shocked and horrified, they spat out the food and rushed back to Anya's hut, anger and confusion etched on their faces. Anya, what have you done? One woman shouted. You promised us food, not poison. Is this some kind of cruel joke? Another villager demanded, holding up a plate of the spoiled food. Anya stood in disbelief, staring at the ruined meal. He had followed the incantation exactly as Anwulika had instructed. Yet the food had turned out disastrously. He couldn't understand what had gone wrong. The villagers, meanwhile, were growing increasingly angry, feeling betrayed and disillusioned. Realizing that he needed to address the situation, Anna tried to calm the crowd. I I don't know what happened. I used the incantation just as Aulika told me, he stammered. Maybe I did something wrong, but I promise I'll make it right. But the villagers were not satisfied. Their trust in Anya had been shattered and they demanded answers. The commotion soon reached the village elders who summoned Anya to explain himself. In the village square, Anya stood before the elders. The villagers gathered around to hear what he had to say. The chief elder, a wise and respected man named Nnamdi, looked at Anya with a stern expression. Anya, you claimed you could continue Anwulika's work and feed the village, Nnamdi began. But what we have seen today is not just a failure. It's a betrayal of the trust we placed in you. How do you explain this? Anya, feeling the weight of the village's disappointment and anger, tried to defend himself. I did as Anwulika's instructed, he insisted. She gave me an incantation to use and I followed it. I don't understand why the food turned out this way. Namdi listened carefully, then sighed. Anya, it's clear that you do not fully understand what Anwulika was trying to teach us. Her gift was not just in the words she spoke, but in the spirit of kindness and generosity with which she lived. The magic of the pot is not something that can be used for personal gain or without genuine intention. The elders' words resonated with the villagers. The Anya felt a deep pang of guilt. He realized that in his eagerness to discover Anwulika's secret, he had overlooked the true essence of her generosity. He had been more interested in the magic of the pot than in the act of selflessly helping others. As punishment for his actions and to atone for the disruption he had caused, the elders decreed that Anya would sweep the village streets and clean the villagers' huts for 6 months. This task, they hoped, would teach him humility and the true meaning of service. As Anya fulfilled his punishment, sweeping the dusty streets and cleaning the huts, he couldn't shake the anger and frustration he felt. He resented the villagers for their harsh judgment and Anwulika for leaving him with what he perceived as a useless incantation. Over time, his anger festered into a desire for revenge. Anya became obsessed with finding Anwulika and confronting her about the incantation. He believed that she had intentionally misled him, leaving him to face the villagers' wrath while she disappeared. Anya's thoughts were consumed with the idea of getting back at Anwulika, and he began to plot how he could find her. After completing his punishment, Anya set out on a journey, visiting neighboring villages and asking for any information about a generous woman with a magical gift for cooking. He traveled far and wide, driven by his desire for revenge and his lingering curiosity about the true nature of Anwulika's pots. As he searched, Anya encountered many people who spoke of a woman matching Anwulika's description, a kind-hearted cook who fed the hungry and never asked for anything in return. These stories only fueled his anger as he felt that Anwulika had betrayed him and the village of Isiagu. Meanwhile, Anwulika had found a new home in her paternal village, a place called Amudo. The villagers there were welcoming and warm, embracing Anwulika and her culinary talents with open arms. Once again, she began cooking for the community, using her special pots to provide abundant meals for all. In Amudo, Anwulika continued to live a life of quiet fulfillment. She cherished her independence and the simple joys of cooking and sharing food with others. The villagers quickly grew to love her, and she became an integral part of the community. They respected her privacy and never pressed her about the source of her seemingly endless supply of food. Anwulika found solace in the new friendships she formed and a sense of purpose that came from helping others. However, she often thought about the village of Isiago and the people she had left behind. She hoped they were doing well and that they had learned from her example. Anwulika also wondered about Anya, hoping he had found a way to understand the true meaning of the lesson she had tried to teach him. As time passed, Anwulika settled into her new life, content in the knowledge that she was continuing her mother's legacy of kindness and generosity. She knew that the true magic of the pots was not in any incantation, but in the love and care she put into every meal. Thank you for listening to this interesting story. There's an adage that says, do not look a gift horse in the mouth, and there's another one that also says, do not bite the finger that fed you. The moral of the story is this: accept every gift with thanks rather than with greed. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next story. Bye.